Sorry.
You don't get me nervous with this. Hi everyone, I'm Pam Volovich and I'm an alcoholic. And my sobriety date is July 1st, 2000. And it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much, Beth, for having me. And I do feel bad about missing when Daniel called me, because he called me months in advance and we planned it. But we did get a little bit of ice, and 2 weeks before the weather was really bad, and I couldn't make it. And then when Beth called me, it was like, yes, absolutely. So no matter what the weather's like. So I'm glad to be here. And you threw me off about that barbecue because I'm really from up north and I still forget about barbecue here. I know it's a shame, but it's true. I'm not a barbecue person. And I am from Wilson, and they do have Bills and Parkers there. But anyway, I am a member of the Primary Purpose Group in Wilson. And my home group meets, actually we're meeting tonight. We have a speaker meeting at 7 o'clock tonight. And every Thursday we have a speaker meeting, and every Monday we have either the first and third Monday is a big book study because we believe in reading the big book. The second Monday is a closed topic discussion meeting, which we use AA approved literature. And the fourth Monday is a tradition. And we believe in tradition, so we have whatever month that falls on as a tradition that we practice. And if there's a fifth Monday, which there is this month, we do history. And I'm really glad to be part of a Three Legacy group. We have a very strong home group, and I'm so grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to start with saying, and you'll hear my story, I'm not the same woman who walked in these rooms 14 years ago. On July 1st, 2000, I was a mess. And because of the sponsor and the heroes and the people who, the line of sobriety that I got involved with, I was very, very lucky because they believed in traditions. They believed in the steps. They believed in service work. They believed in home group. I didn't have a choice. I had to suit up and show up whenever my home group opened the doors. I had to call my sponsor every single day. And I needed that. I really did then, because I was very wild and I was never disciplined. And I'm just so glad that I had a woman that showed me, how to become, a member of society today. Today I'm a good mother, a good neighbor. They're not calling the cops on me. I have a job that I could never hold a job before. In fact, I never got a week's paid vacation because I never worked anywhere for a year. Never. It was unheard of for me. So I didn't even know you can get paid vacation. And now I'm at a job for 10 years. It's unbelievable to me. And I get 3 weeks paid vacation. And I'm, like I said, a good mother, a daughter, a sister. I'm a grandmother today. My granddaughter will be 2, believe it or not, in April, and I'm really excited. And my life is just amazing. It's amazing to me. And I give all that to God, and God has me in Alcoholics Anonymous. So let me tell you a little bit about myself, where I was born and raised from Hazleton, Pennsylvania. And it's very cold there, and if nobody's really familiar where that's at, that's the northeast section by the Poconos, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton. And my grandfather owned a bar, and it was called Val's Bar. So I grew up in a bar. So before I could walk or talk, I was in a bar room. And what I grew up and believed was I thought everybody drank. I just believed everybody drank. And I thought everybody smoked, because everybody in our house drank and smoked, and that's what we did. And they celebrated all the time. A very big family, a Polish family. It's my mom and dad, my 3 brothers, my sister, and myself. And not only us, but it was Uncle Joe, Aunt Lori, my cousin Eddie, all the neighbors. Everybody gathered at the Volovich house. And they would drink every weekend. Whether it was a wedding, a funeral, a party, a graduation, a christening, it didn't matter. It could be nothing, and there was drinking. And there was card games, and there were dart games, and that's what I grew up around, and that's what I saw. To me, it was a lot of fun. It was very exciting. But on the flip side, I also saw the abuse that comes with alcohol. And I thought everybody went through that. I thought everybody had, chairs thrown out the window, lamps broken, people beat up, the cops over your house. I thought that was pretty normal. And I was very proud of my life, and I just loved being, you know, the kid on the block that had all the excitement going on. I can remember getting on the bus, they'd say, "Oh, here come the Voloviches," meaning trouble. Really, we really were, but I never saw that. I just took so much pride in my family. You know, I thought, yeah, we're really cool, and we've got it, you know, all together, and this is what life is. I had my first drink. In fact, I had alcoholic behavior before I drank because I felt like I never fit in. My sister, Debbie, was 5'1", blonde and thin. I was tall, real chubby growing up, and loud, very, very loud child. And I always wanted to be her. So I never felt like I fit in my body. And I can remember being mad at God, thinking, why did you give her the pretty body and the looks? And she got straight A's. She was in the gymnastics, you know, just all of that. And here I was, I'd fall over my own 2 feet, real clumsy, heavy, loud, and I used to bring home C's and D's. But I never put any effort. I hated school, so I didn't put any effort in it. And I used to get mad at God and say, why, you know, why am I me? How come I'm not in her body? So right away I had a resentment with God, and I didn't want to be who I was. And I was very loud, and the very first time I watched everybody drink, and I couldn't wait to drink. So when I was 14, I remember me and my cousin Ronnie, we had to be 21 to drink in Pennsylvania then, and we got somebody to get us alcohol. So he went and bought us a gallon of blackberry brandy. I don't know why he got blackberry brandy, but that's what he bought. And we hid it in the woods, and I was really excited. And I could remember, and it's funny because through my whole drinking career, I was always planning my next drink, thinking about it. Where am I going to go? What am I going to wear? Who's going to be at the bar? Or is there a DJ or a band? Or who's going to drive? I was always plotting and planning my next drink. So even before I drank, I was plotting and planning drinking. And I remember being in school that day thinking, oh, I hope no hunters are in the woods and find our alcohol and drink it. You know, I was worried about that alcohol all day, and that's all I could think about. And when I had my first drink, it was funny because it was just me and Ronnie. We got home from school, did what we had to do. We met in the woods, we started drinking. And like I said, I never felt like I fit in. But I'll tell you, here's what alcohol did for me. When I started to drink, all of a sudden, Pam lost 20 pounds. I got thin, and I got really pretty, and really smart. And I thought, and the more I drank, the smarter and prettier I got. And I thought, wow, I could get any guy I want. I am popular. I am pretty. And poor Ronnie, he probably had problems too, but I guess he had muscle issues. I don't know, but I didn't see any muscles. But the more he tried flexing and drinking, we were toasting to his muscles that I couldn't see. But we had so much fun. I loved it. It was almost like a fantasy, you know, a delusion that I was in, and I loved it. But I also don't remember how I got home, so apparently I had a blackout. And then I woke up the next day in my clothes, in the bed, stuck to the pillow. So apparently I passed out in bed, and I didn't know what I was stuck with, and I don't even think they had Velcro back then. But I threw up, and I was stuck in my throat. So it was terrible. But I couldn't wait to do it again. I never drank blackberry brandy after that, ever. But I couldn't wait to feel that way. I couldn't wait to feel thin, pretty, smart, popular. You know, all those things that alcohol, I wasn't afraid anymore. It gave me courage. It gave me everything I was lacking. And then I searched for that, and anytime I could drink, I drank, and I had a lot of fun drinking. I didn't get in too much trouble. I, graduated high school. I drank whenever I could. And like I said, I saw it around the family. And I can remember, I'll tell you a little thing about Uncle Joe. I didn't know what a blackout was. And I was a blackout drinker and didn't know anything about a blackout until I came in AA. But I knew that I would do stuff and say things that I didn't remember. Like I would fall down steps, like a flight of stairs, 12 steps, and not remember. I jumped out of a moving car, and didn't remember. And the crazy things that I did. But I remember when I was younger, and Uncle Joe would come to our house, and my mom was an enabler. I didn't know what that was, but she was the caretaker who took care of all the drunks. She cleaned all the mess up. Her and my Aunt Lori never drank, but they cleaned everybody up. And I can remember Uncle Joe coming over, and he looks like Kenny Rogers, he did then, and loved to drink, and he had a lot of women because he could never keep a relationship, and he drank all the time, and he would come over my mom's and not remember half the stuff he did. And a lot of times, like, he'd have a rope on his van bumper because he smashed his bumper. He didn't even know how he did what he did half the time. And we would be telling him things that he did, so he was blacking out and not remembering. So when I started blacking out, I thought, well, that's normal. Uncle Joe never remembered half of what he did. My dad never remembered, you know, some of the physical abuse, even slapping my mom around. He didn't remember it. So I thought that's pretty normal. I can remember one time, I'll just tell you one fast thing about Uncle Joe. In Pennsylvania, there's a lot of mountains, and we would get kegs of beer and drink outside and have a bonfire. And Uncle Joe had a pin in his knee, so his one knee, he couldn't bend it. It was like a straight leg. And it's real hilly. And we're all standing there drinking, and I guess he went somewhere to try to go to the bathroom, and he came back, and all of a sudden we see something rolling down the hill, sticking up like a stick. And we're all drunk looking, oh, what's that? Oh, Uncle Joe! And everybody runs over and grabs Uncle Joe. He didn't remember, he didn't feel anything. And, you know, we'd just put him in a chair and we'd sit him there and we'd give him another beer. You know, we try not to put him close to the fire because one time he fell in the fire. We saw all these flames and Uncle Joe's in the fire. You know, get him out of the fire and stick him in a chair and give him a beer. You know, that's what we did. And I could just remember that, and to me that was a lot of fun. So anyway, I found the bars. I moved to New Orleans, Louisiana, and drinking age was 18 then. And I loved it. I loved the nightclubs. I loved the, you know, just the fantasy of the bar when you walk in, the twinkling of the glasses, the ice cubes tinkling, the music, everybody dressing up. To me, it was like a big fantasy. But I never thought about, like, when I would go, I would be all excited, but I would never think about the next day, you know, the remorse and the regret and everything. I would never think about that. I always think about the beginning of drinking, never the repercussions of it. But anyway, I danced a lot, I drank a lot, I lived there for about a year, and then I had a phone call from my father, and my sister, she was, like I said, everybody in our family drinks except my mom and my aunt. And she left a party one night, and she was 2 days after she turned 19, because I always think she's 18, but she was really just 19 years old 2 days later. And she left a party 4 in the morning, drunk, and she hit a tree head on, and she was killed. And I remember being angry at God, being mad at God, because how dare you take my sister away from me, because I always argued with her and always wanted to be her, so I never had that relationship. And then when you get older, you want that relationship. And she was supposed to come and spend the summer with me, you know, that following summer, and she died. And I remember coming home, and what did? We all drank. I mean, we were just drinking, we got drunk, and we blamed the people who had the party. We never saw that alcohol killed her. I mean, that's what it did. She was drinking and driving, and she hit a tree head on, and she died. But what we saw was she left the party. It was the guy's fault. Why didn't he take her keys? And we blamed him. And my whole life, I blamed God. I blamed other people. And I didn't know that until I came in AA, how much I just blamed everybody, you know, except for the truth. Alcohol was killing me. It killed my sister. 2 of my brothers spent time in prison because of alcohol. My father beat my mom up so bad she was in the hospital for 3 days because of alcohol. So even though I may talk about the funny stuff that happened, there's a lot of tragedy in my family and my life because of alcohol, and I never wanted to see that. For some reason, I would just put that away somewhere else and be in denial of it. So anyway, I came back home. I stayed there for a while, moved back to New Orleans. I ended up living in El Paso, Texas. I moved around a lot. I guess I was trying to get away from myself, trying to start over somewhere, but I always followed. And then I always ended up in a bar. I mean, I love the clubs and just all that entertainment. And then I remember I came back to Pennsylvania, and I met my first husband, and I was drunk, and we were at a red light. And I don't recommend that. But anyway, I was with this girl, and she was drunk, so I wasn't driving, but I was letting a drunk drive me. You know, the insanity of it. And we were at a red light, and him and his friend were there. We started talking, And next thing you know, we're dating. And he is not an alcoholic. He is a great guy. He is the father of my 2 boys, Michael and Eric, 2 great children that he raised. He put them through college. He did the basketball, the football, the baseball, the wrestling. He did all that because I was too busy drinking. But when I met him, he didn't know that I was an alcoholic. I didn't either. I just knew I loved to drink. And he was a big guy, and we dated 2.5 years. And what he did, he was like my mom. Every time I got drunk, he would clean me up. And he would just make it better. Like my mom made everything better for my Uncle Joe or my aunt or, you know, just clean us all up. And I didn't know I was an alcoholic. But he's the type who could have 1 beer, cut the grass, come in the house, eat, and maybe have another beer. I know, it made no sense to me. I thought, you ruined everything by cutting the grass and eating. Should have just kept drinking. I can't even imagine that. He could leave a case of beer in the refrigerator for 2 weeks. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do it. As soon as I started drinking, I wanted more, until I blacked out or passed out or, you know, threw up or was sick. And I just wanted that buzz. I wanted to feel really good, but then I wanted to stop, and I didn't know how. You know, I didn't know how. And so let's see what happened. I'll tell you a little bit about my marriage, a part of, because I'm going to talk about God. The big book says that I could do that, because that's how I found my relationship really with God. My whole life, I struggled with a relationship with God. I was born and raised in a Catholic church, so I knew like the novenas and the rosaries and all those kind of prayers, but I didn't have a relationship with God. Then when my sister died, I blamed God, so now I'm mad at God. But I remember being a little girl, and my dad didn't believe in God. He believed that what you have, money is your God. So what you own is who you are, what you drive is who you are, what you wear is who you are, you know, all that stuff, all that materialism. He believed in all that, and my mom believed in God, the God of the Bible. And that's what I saw as a child. So I thought, I gotta have a lot so you'll like me. Gotta have. Drive a nice car, wear nice clothes, be really pretty so you like me, because I believed that for a long time. And my mom, you know, would just tell us the truth about a loving God in the Bible. So anyway, I had a resentment against God after my sister died, and then when I got married, I had these 2 little babies, and a man who, you know, loved me and the kids, didn't know I was an alcoholic, trying to make a living, but he liked to eat. And he gave me a menu, and I hate to cook. I don't know how to cook. And I was like, oh my God, everything I made, I burnt. And the more I had to cook, the more I drank. So I'd be sitting there drinking, he's working, the kids are little, I had everything on high on the stove to hurry up and try to cook while I'm drinking, you know, on the phone, blabbing, or having some kind of soap opera on, and just drinking in the afternoon. He'd come home from work, and I'd be drunk. Kids be running around, the food's burnt, and there I'm drunk in the afternoon. And he would clean up my mess, and he would just clean up my mess. And I remember one time he came home from work, and he never knew when he came home what he was going to come home to. He didn't know if I'd be crying, if I'd be happy, if I'd be in a sexy outfit, if I spent a lot of money. I was like a Sybil. However I felt is how I acted when I drank. And I ran on my emotions, and I lived on my emotions. So one time he came home, and like I said, we were married in the Catholic Church, and I felt like I was missing something in my life. Even though I had 2 kids, a great husband, a beautiful home, he bought me a lot of stuff, and we had a lot. But I just continued to drink, and I felt empty inside. I didn't know what it was. But I started the church search. And I remember when he came home one day, and I said, well, I think we're going to become Methodists. And he said, what? You know, we're Catholic. I said, yeah, I know, but they make ice cream, and they've got a softball team, and, you know, it was my way of trying to get close to God and try to get part of the church. And he agreed. And he did anything I wanted. He was really a good guy. So that lasted till I got tired of it. And then he came home one day, and I made the announcement, we're going to become Assembly of God. And he said, what's an Assembly of God? And I said, I don't know. They have tambourines, and I want to learn how to play one. And you know what I noticed is so funny? I love the South. I'm here 17 years. I love it. But when I first came here, I looked at the phone book. I don't even know if they have phone books today with, the internet. But in Pennsylvania, when you open the phone book, half the phone book is filled with bar rooms. And there's only a little tiny bit has churches. And most of those churches are Catholic from where I'm at. When you come down south, more than half the book is filled with churches. It's unbelievable. And there's not that many bar rooms. So I just thought that was really neat. So anyway, he never knew what he was going to come home with. And eventually he came home one day and I wanted a divorce. And it was sort of out of the blue. I just felt like my life was getting out of control. I was going nowhere. I was very unhappy. And I wanted to leave him. And that's what happened. We ended up getting divorced. We ended up living 3 blocks away from each other. And we had to go to orphans court with the kids. And I remember that he was really upset because the judge only gave him a limited amount of time to spend with the boys. And I thought, oh, that's not really a good idea. I still want child support now. This is all about Pam. And I want to start my life over, but I'm going to need a babysitter. So I told him, I said, well, you can watch the kids a lot. Forget about what the judge says. I will give you the kids as often as you want because I'm going to try to get a new life. Isn't that terrible? But that's the kind of mother I was. I wanted to drink. I was 30 years old. I just got divorced. We were together 10 years. And I had arrived. And what happened, I became a bartender. And that was a big downfall in my life. I thought, wow, this is going to be so exciting. I started bartending. I did that for 2 years. I loved it. I loved it. And I wasn't in the same bar because, I'd get fired and have to go to another bar. That's how I was, because I drank behind the bar. And I drank a lot. And I danced a lot. And I dated a lot. But I had no stability, I had no real relationship, I had no friends because of my mouth and my gossiping and my actions and my behavior. I couldn't keep relationships, friends that would even want to be with me. That's the kind of person I was. And what happened was, just checking the time there, okay. I didn't know what was going on. My life was spinning out of control, but you couldn't have told me that because I was having a really good time. But my brothers are out in the bars, and they're hearing stuff about their sister. And they're seeing things, and they're hearing things that they're ashamed of. Now, they all drink. They're all having a good time. But I'm really out of control. So they went back to the family, and they told the family. And my family is very strange. We're just a really big family. And, in fact, with AA, we have business meetings. Well, I knew about business meetings before AA because our family always has meetings, and we'd have to get together. We'd get a phone call. The family's getting together. Anytime there was a problem, the family has to get Uncle Joe, Cousin Eddie, everybody, even some of the neighbors were involved in it, and they're not even family. And it's like, we're going to talk about this, and then we're going to punish somebody. And all of a sudden, I got this phone call, and I thought, ooh, a family meeting. Ooh, I can't wait to hear who's in trouble. Take the car from her, ground him, yay. I'm going to have a voice in this. But I didn't know it was about me. I was really I'm having a great time. I get there, and all of a sudden, I'm hearing all this stuff. It was horrible. Things I didn't even know I did. Things I had no idea. They were telling me stuff that they heard in the bars, how I was behaving, what I was doing. I was so out of control. And I just felt like they were really blowing it up and lying, because I said, I don't behave like that. But it was the truth. It really was. And I was very ashamed. I was very embarrassed. But I wasn't done drinking. I was having a good time. But my family said I needed to stop drinking. In fact, my mother, being an enabler, she got in touch with Alcoholics Anonymous. And she was so worried because of my actions that the kids were going to be taken from me. Okay, so her concern was the children being taken from their mother. And she found out about Alcoholics Anonymous, and she said, they can't say your name. They can't tell who you are. It's a big secret club, and they'll help you. So my Aunt Lori, who doesn't drink, and she's going to go with me, they made her go with me. And I remember my father saying to me, I'll never forget this. He said, Pamela, learn to drink like a lady. And I thought, well, I could do that. They could teach me how to drink like a lady. So it'd be like a course, a class, 12 steps. I don't know if it's 12 months or what. And I'll never forget it. And this was in Pennsylvania, and it was at a church. And we had old-timers there that had a lot of sobriety. And I didn't know what any of that was. But there was Jersey Joe, Mike Kay, Rachel from New York, like 18 years, 24 years, 17 years sobriety. And I thought, and I remember I had long, stringy blonde hair then. And I used to wear really short skirts and like 4-inch heels. And too much jewelry and too much makeup. I was a mess. But anyway, I walked in like, I've arrived. And I remember Rachel from New York. She had 18 years, and she came up to me and she said, Blondie, if you don't take the first drink, you won't get drunk. And I thought, she needs this class. No wonder she's here 18 years. Who gets drunk off the first drink? So I thought, stay away from that one. I didn't know. But anyway, I was there 4 meetings I went to, and I ended up getting a big book and a 12 and 12. And here's what happened. The 4th meeting was it was a slogan meeting, and they chose one day at a time as a topic. Now, I'm a planner. I plan everything. And then I used to plan on a Monday what I was wearing Friday, what band I was going to see, or what DJ and what bar, and who's driving. And then I'd hardly eat all week, because eventually I lost weight, and I didn't want to gain the weight, so I'd have to starve all week so I could drink. There's a lot of work in that. But I'm a planner. I would go to the fortune tellers to find out who my next date was going to be, Mr. Right. I had my tea leaves read, horoscope, I did all of that. I don't do that today, but I was into all that. And here, I'm at this meeting, and they're talking about one day at a time, and it scared me. And I became angry. And I think anytime you become mad and angry, it's because I didn't understand it. I was afraid. But I thought, these people are crazy. I never heard of such a thing, live in the day, 24 hours in the day. That's insane. So I got mad, and I said to my aunt, we're leaving. I'm done with this place. And she said, I wish I was an alcoholic. I love it. She wanted to stay. I said, come on, we're going back. We're calling a meeting. I'm calling a meeting. So we did. We called a meeting. But I had to have a plan. And I did. I wrote it down. And here's what I announced at the meeting. I said, AA, forget AA. It's not going to work for me. They're crazy. Living in the day and all this. And my whole family's, it doesn't sound right. Forget AA. And I said, Dad, there's no learning how to drink like a lady there. They want you not to drink anymore. Oh, no. So, and then I said, well, what I'll do is I'll quit bartending, because that's my problem. Not quit drinking, really, just quit bartending. I will go back to church, and I'll get a real job. And then I'm going to try to quit drinking, try to lay off drinking. 8 days later, I was drunk. I didn't know I couldn't do it. I had no idea. I thought I had the power to do it, but I didn't. So self-will did not work for me. And then 2 years later, my life got totally out of control. And I am not going to get into that because it's really bad, but I'm going to tell you one little part. And for the longest time, I would never tell this from behind the podium because I was always ashamed. And then, I don't know, God just brought it on my heart one day, and he said, somebody may need to hear it, Pam. And now I tell it. And it's a horrible thing to say, but I'm going to tell you what happened. Here's the kind of mother I became. I'm going to wrap up the 2 years. I would drink all the time. In fact, the days that I had the kids, I tried not to drink on those days. But being an alcoholic, I couldn't. I had to drink. I ended up drinking on the nights I had my kids because I didn't know how not to drink. And then I remember it was a Wednesday night, and I had the kids, and I started drinking, and eventually they went to bed, and I'm drunk, really feeling good. And I looked in the refrigerator. I needed more, and there wasn't any more. And I thought, well, the kids are sleeping. I'm just going to sneak out, and I'm going to go down the bar, which is like a half a block away, and I'm just going to get a 6-pack and come home. That was my plan. Well, you know what happens with an alcoholic. I walked in the bar, and hey, Joy, how are you? Yeah, buy her a shot. Oh my God, Jim, yay, the jukebox. I'll have another shot. Give the whole bar a round. And it went on, and it went on. And I have no idea what time it was. I was drunk. And my son, they were 7 and 5 at the time, and my 7-year-old woke up in the middle of the night. And here's the really sad part. I mean, I could have been on 20/20. I could have been in prison, lost my kids. But what happened was he looked for me and couldn't find me. But he knew where I was. That's how sad and sick I became. And he had those little feet pajamas on, you know, those zip-up feet pajamas. And he walked out of the house and he walked to the bar. And I'm sitting drunk at the bar, and he's pulling on me and pulling on me. Mommy, 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 come home, come home. And I got so mad because how dare you embarrass me in front of all my friends. And I took him home and I gave him a spanking. I mean, I was so mad. And I'm so ashamed of that, but I'm not that woman anymore. I'm not that woman anymore. But that's where alcohol took me. That's where alcohol, my son is 30 today, and he's got a little baby, and he loves AA. In fact, he met Tom. You spoke at a meeting that him and his wife came to. They're not alcoholic, and they heard Tom speak. In fact, I have a picture of him on my refrigerator, and he said, I always wondered who that guy was. And he got to meet you. But he's just so proud of me today. But anyway, that wasn't my bottom. That was not my bottom. That's the sad thing, is I drank after that. And I don't really know what my bottom was. It wasn't the worst drink, but it was a day I woke up, and it was a Monday, and I looked in the mirror. I was drunk all weekend, and I started crying. And I didn't feel God in me anymore. And I love God, but I didn't really have a relationship at all with God, and I missed the God that my mom talked about. And I hated the woman that I saw in the mirror, and I was ashamed of her. And I thought, God, you don't even have a relationship with your children. Your family barely talks to you. You have no friends. You can't even date because you chase all these guys away. I'm just a really sick individual. And I was so ashamed of myself. And I remember saying I needed help, and I ended up going to Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, this was not in 2000, and that's my sobriety date. This was in 1996. So I could tell you what not to do when you get in AA, oh my gosh. So anyway, I didn't call a meeting with the family. I showed up at a meeting, and you know who was there? Rachel from New York, Jersey Joe, John Kay. And I was so glad. I was so glad that the same people that I had met 2 years ago were still there. That was so comforting to me, because it's a scary thing coming in Alcoholics Anonymous and not knowing anybody, and knowing that you're an alcoholic and you're ashamed of it. And then you see these faces that, oh yeah, there you are. And they welcomed me, and they greeted me with love. I ended up getting a sponsor in name only. I did not listen to anything she said. She was a very nice woman. She told me, here's what she told me. She said, don't quit your job. These were suggestions. Do not quit your job because you can afford, you have a good job that's not around alcohol. Don't move, and this is for 1 year, don't move because you could afford where you're living, because she had wanted to go through the steps and everything with me. And don't get in a relationship, because at that time I wasn't in one. And I got mad. And I thought, who are you? Of course I didn't tell her that, but behind her back, I got mad. I thought, who is she to tell me I can't date? Like a whole year is a long time. And, I don't think so. So, and what I saw in AA was co-ed, men and women, so I was really excited. And what I did was I played AA like I played the bars. I went to all different meetings. If there was a meeting, I never had a home group because I did not want to belong anywhere. I just wanted to check things out. I was really sick. I never called my sponsor, and in fact, I remember pulling up to one meeting, and they were having, and I used to smoke back then, so I'm outside, and I'd come like 5 or 8 minutes before, enough time to have a cigarette and gossip, and then as soon as the meeting was over, I'd leave immediately. That's how I was. And I remember getting early to this meeting, and somebody said it was a tradition meeting, and I'm there smoking, ew, tradition, it's boring, because I'm so cool. I'm leaving this meeting, I'm going to another meeting where it's more hip. And I did, I left that meeting. I was just so full of myself. And I ended up in the Valley in Cunningham. And I remember walking into this meeting, and oh my gosh, there was this guy. It was all over as soon as I saw him. First of all, he's chairing the meeting, and I thought, wow, he must run AA. He might be the CEO of AA, I don't know, but he's good looking. I was very sick. And he had a key to the church. And I just zoomed in on him, and I was not even a year sober. And I only knew him for 4 months. How do you know anybody for 4 months? I'm an angel the first 6 months because I want you to like me, right? You don't know people 4 months. But I remember calling my sponsor after 4 months, and I said, I quit my job, I got married, and I'm moving to North Carolina. She said, good luck. What was she going to say? I never called her. Self-will, run right. I was the director in the book. I was running my own life. So we'll come to find out, he, and I don't really want to say anything bad about him, but I'm just going to tell the truth. He did not work any steps. He didn't have a sponsor, and he didn't have a home group. So he didn't do anything. So here we are, two nothings doing nothing together. We took the kids. We moved to Goldsboro. We lived there for a year. And here's what I did, same thing. Joined Green Acres Group. What I liked about it was they had meetings every day, so I didn't have to join a meeting. I could go whenever I wanted to that building. I still didn't have to make that commitment. I was so afraid of commitment. And I got a sponsor in name only, never, ever called her. I mean, I never worked any steps. And then we moved to Wilson because he got a job there, and we bought a home. And then I was working part-time as a dog groomer. And he was, like, you don't know anybody for 4 months. But anyway, he told me he was an entrepreneur. And I thought, well, that sounds exciting. There might be money in that, right? He could buy me a lot of stuff because I'm so materialistic, right? And what he did was he sold stuff on eBay and flea markets. But anyway, I remember coming home one day, and here's what paybacks are. My first husband never knew what he was coming home to because I was always drunk. And he never knew when he was going to open that door what Pam was like. Well, when I would come home from my little part-time job, I never knew what I was walking into with this man. And I opened the door one day, and he made an announcement. He was really good at that. And he said, I've decided I'm not an alcoholic and I'm going to drink. And I said, oh, my God, I met you in AA. I thought you were alcoholic. He said, no, really, I'm a drug dealer. Oh, my God. I mean, I don't even do drugs. And I married a dealer. So you want to talk about a shock. So, tell you, you don't know people. So anyway, he said he's going to drink. Well, here's what happened. He did. And everything got crazy. So crazy the kids moved out. And then another time I walked home, I came home from after, grooming the dogs, and half my furniture was gone. And in the middle of the living room is a huge pool table. One that you put quarters in, had quarters in it, right? And it had a big light with a fluorescent light, and it had Budweiser horses on it. And he's drunk, and this is like 2 o'clock in the afternoon playing 80s music. I was so sick of 80s music. Right? And he's shooting pool drunk out of his mind, and I'm like, what are you doing? What's happening? And he said, oh, didn't I tell you, babe? I'm a pool shark. Where's my furniture? So anyway, it was terrible. So what happened was I didn't go to church anymore. I didn't go to AA anymore. I didn't pray anymore. I didn't do anything, but I wasn't drinking. I was that's a dark place to be. Let me tell you, it's a dark place. And I sat in my car, and I'm crying, and what am I going to do? And I made a decision to drink. I said, I'm going to drink. Because AA doesn't work. But did you hear? I'm not doing anything in AA. But it's not working for me. And I made a decision to drink. So I had a plot and plan. I mean, oh my God, I had to go buy a dress. Could you believe it? I bought a dress. I planned it. I told exactly what I wanted to eat. I got all dressed up. I was really excited. And I didn't drink in 4 years, so I thought, well, it'll be like old times. The good days. And what happened was I got so drunk, because I didn't eat all day either. I was sick for 3 days. I threw up for 3 days. And I was sick as a dog. And I remember crying. I remember him looking at me saying, boy, you're alcoholic, you can't drink. And then I was mad. And I became really mad. And I thought, how dare you call me an alcoholic? I don't want to be an alcoholic. I don't want to be an alcoholic. And then I remember I ended up back at Walmart parking lot because I didn't have any friends. And only dogs, I work with dogs all day. So I'm sitting in Walmart parking lot and I'm crying again. And I remember I started praying and I said, God, help me. And I know it was God because it was not me. It would never have been my idea. And God said to me, Alcoholics Anonymous. And I thought, oh, that doesn't work. I don't want to go back to AA. Alcoholics Anonymous. And I thought, oh my gosh, okay. So I'll go back, but I got to lie. because I'm not picking up a white chip. Then I learned having a lot of years was good. Okay, eventually I learned that. So I didn't want to lose my 4-year medallion, you know, the 4-year, because I thought that's made me who I am. Isn't that crazy? What you wear, what you drive, it's absolutely insane. It's not true, but I believed it. And I thought this 4-year chip will make me important. I will come back in AA and I'll say, hey, I'm Pam, I have 4 years, how are you? Oh yeah, I got 4 years, how you doing? And I'll be popular. This was my thinking. I was very sick. And I did that. But I ended up in a home group that believed in the traditions, that believed in the steps, that believed in home group, that believed in sponsorship, that believed in service work. That was a 3 legacy group. And the woman I got hooked up with was a big book thumper, and she was a very strong woman in Alcoholics Anonymous. And she said to me, are you willing to do everything I tell you? And I said, yeah, I'll do whatever you want me to. But I'm not really going to tell the truth. You know, I'm going to keep my little 4-year secret alive right now because I want to be popular. But here's the neat thing. Here's how God worked in my life. I did everything she told me to do. I joined the home group. I suited up and showed up a half hour before and stayed a half hour later. And plus, we used to meet on a Friday, Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday. So that's the whole weekend. And I said, well, can't I rotate, you know, one weekend a Friday and one weekend a Saturday? That's my whole weekend. She said, no. You have to come every time these doors open. So I learned commitment. I learned how to be part of a home group. I ended up being a secretary. I ended up chairing meetings. I started taking my place. I started speaking places, but I'm behind the podium and I'm still lying because I can't tell you that I drank because I don't want to pick up a white chip because I'm afraid of what you'll think of me. That's how sick I was. The good news is I spoke somewhere, and I'll never forget it. Sarah picked me up, real good member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was speaking in Raleigh. And I'm still married to this guy, and he's drinking every day. I mean, it's chaotic. But I was so glad to have a sponsor in AA, and I was always in AA trying to be away from him. And I remember she picked me up, and I was the speaker, and she had a van filled with guys, and I was petrified. I thought, what are you doing? I can't get in this van. You know, if Jim finds out, I'm in a lot of trouble. He's real possessive and jealous, and I'll be in a lot of trouble. And I said, do me a favor. If he asks, just say it was a bunch of women, and I'm going to lie. And she said, I will not. And I thought, oh my God, you won't lie for me? I could be in a lot of trouble. I thought you were my friend. She said, you need to talk to your sponsor. And now here we're arguing, and I'm the speaker. So, yeah, never get behind the podium like that. First of all, I've got a lie in me, I'm mad at her, and I'm just a mess. And it's all about me. All about me. Just like I just want to say tonight, I think it was Matt, I hope I have it right, and Wallace prayed me up before I got behind this podium. And I so appreciate that because I have to move out of the way for God to speak. Then it was all about me behind that podium. And I had resentment, anger, fear, because I was afraid about my husband and everything. And it was the worst talk I ever gave. After it, I threw a tantrum, right, with my sponsor, yelling at her about Sarah. And she looked at me and she said to me, Pam, if you want God to dwell in you, and that's what I wanted more than anything, then you have to get honest. And it hit me. And it was like not only just honest to Jim about the guys in the van, but about me drinking. That 4-year medallion, my lie. I lied for 10 months. 10 months I lied. And I'll just never forget it. It took me 3 days. I had to think about it for 3 days, but God didn't let up on me. And then I ended up going to my sponsor's house crying, and I told her the truth. And here's the neat thing. My whole life changed after that. I mean, it's just amazing when you get honest. And how it works in the one chapter, that paragraph, honesty is mentioned 3 times. That's how important it is. And I had to get honest with myself, and then I had to get honest with my sponsor. And I have to get honest. And then when I told her, she was really excited, and I thought, oh, I got off easy. No. She got out a pen and a paper and the big book, and she started going through the book, and she said, oh, I can't read it verbatim, but she said, cleaning up your side of the street. And I thought, well, what? I don't know what that means. She said, well, you know step 9? I said, yeah, I'm not there yet. Why? She said, yes, you are. how many groups, let's get a pen and a paper, did you speak at? 5. And I said, yeah, what about those 5 groups? What do I have to do? Oh my God, I'm going to scream. I don't want to do this. I thought amends was one-on-one, not paying on groups. So that was my first 9th step. And I had to go to 5 groups and make an amend. But the good news was she said, you don't have to do it alone. She went with me to every single group. My life changed as a result of that. It totally turned around. It took me a while to leave him because of fear. And fear will stop you in your tracks. Fear is a terrible thing. You got to have trust in God. You have to have trust in Alcoholics Anonymous. Just do the steps. Do them. And just do that right next thing. And I learned that. It took me a long time to learn it, but I learned it. But the fear of, I was afraid to leave him because he's paying child support. He was paying my car payment. He was buying me all this stuff. And I was working at a dog groomer for part-time, making $7 an hour, 20 hours a week. I can't do it. How am I going to do it? Where will I go? Where will I live? I have 5 dogs because I was trying to breed dogs too, and a part-time job, and I don't know what to do. And she said, Pam, you got to just trust God. You got to do the 3rd step. And like I said, fear held me back a while, and then until I couldn't take it any longer, I mean, he just really got out of control. And I made a decision, because that's what that is. I made a decision, and to turn my will and life over to God. And I called her up and I said, Sandy, I'm ready to do the 3rd step, and I'm ready to do this. And here's how God worked. 5 days later, and it's not me, my whole life changed. Within 5 days, I had people in AA call me. In fact, I moved in with a couple from Alcoholics Anonymous because I had nowhere to live, stayed with them for 4 months. I had my mom and my brothers came up from Pennsylvania, and my mom took my 5 dogs because I couldn't bring 5 dogs over somebody's house. So she was going to watch them and care for them. I had people in AA that helped me move. I had a woman that had a barn that helped me store my stuff that didn't cost me anything. I had somebody in AA who had a, you know, what do you call that? You put vehicle stuff on a moving van, and all I had to do was put gas in it. Everything turned around within 5 days. It was a miracle. Because I did that step and I just did the right next thing. And then I left them, and I ended up living with people, and I was scared. I'm telling you, I mean, I was scared. I didn't know if I was going to make it. I was 40 years old then. I didn't know, I never went to college, so I didn't think I'd get a good job. I didn't know what my life was going to be like. And I couldn't live with people for AA forever. You know, just like a lot of times you clean up your life and you end up in a halfway house or something. It's not going to be like that forever. And that's what my sponsor told me. Just today, Pam, just do it today. You'll get through it. Trust God and do the right thing. Suit up and show up for work no matter what. Suit up and show up at your home group. Keep doing that right thing and your life will change. And eventually it did. I mean, I didn't know how to get a job. She said, well, first you got to put an application and do a resume. I don't even know what a resume is. A bartender, you just walk in and they hire you. You know, you don't do resumes. But she had to teach me how. And I was so scared. I had to learn how to shop at the dollar store. I am not a dollar store person. You know, it was very hard. Today, I love the dollar store. I'm telling you, you want to save some money, it's good. She had to teach me that. She had to teach, I had to learn. It was like growing up all over again, you know. Eventually, I wanted to get an apartment, and what happened was I moved out from people with AA, but I had a room with somebody, which was a Christian woman and everything, and we rented an apartment together. So I had to do that for a year. You know, I didn't have cable TV for like the first 7 years. I didn't have cable. You know, can you imagine today I have a flat screen and cable? But then I didn't even have cable. But I got closer to God. I made every meeting. I was excited. I was sponsoring women. I was doing something. My life was changing. You know, I got divorced. And then just to wrap up, and I don't want to say this to brag or anything, because if it wasn't for Alcoholics Anonymous changing my life and God in my life, I would not be the woman I am today. And I am so grateful. Like I said, today I have a job. I'm there 10 years. That's unbelievable to me. They trust me. I suit up and show up every day. I own my own home today. That's unbelievable. My car's paid for. Wow. And I bought a car and I paid the payments for 5 years and I paid it off. Unbelievable, the things that you can do. And it's not about material things, but it's just about doing that right thing. Keep God first. and God to me are one. And then everything else will clean up. The steps will clean all that other stuff up. And that's been my experience. So, anyway, thank you again, Beth, for asking me, and thank you so much for patiently listening to me.